Once again, Brandon Johnson has brought a letter from one of their clients, which, as I said before, is one of my favorite things to do. May I?
Yes.
All right. We just purchased a home last month. In our inspection report, the radon level was over 3 times the acceptable level. By the way, January is Radon Awareness Month, folks. The seller refused to do anything about it, and we had to pay out of pocket to remediate the radon ourselves. How can a seller be allowed to sell a property in which they know the radon levels are so high? Brandon?
Yeah, so there's a couple things here. First off, specific to radon, you mentioned January is Radon Awareness Month, which is good to bring up. The acceptable level of a radon test is 4.0. So anything that's higher than 4.0 is deemed elevated. And the thing to know about radon and those tests is you can take that test a variety of different times and you will get a variety of different readings. So it's important to know that it is a point in time test, and it's not necessarily constant. And what I've found, and what talking with people that are more knowledgeable than me, is you're going to find the highest readings where there's the greatest temperature differential between outside and inside. So for instance, January, when it's 65, 70 degrees inside and it's, 5 degrees outside, or it's August and it's, 95 degrees outside and, 65 degrees inside. So those are generalizations, but you can get very low readings in certain times of the year and very high readings. So it's a point in time test. Now, that being said, in this scenario, there must have been an extremely high test. Common sense says, and this isn't specific to radon, but if there's something very structurally wrong with the house, well, how can they sell it like that? And that's kind of the tone of this question, right? And the reality of it is a seller can sell a house in any condition.
Right.
And there's some fine, details there if you're in the metro and there's truth in housing laws. But by and large, you can sell a house in any condition as long as you properly disclose the condition. So a seller is not required to bring it up to code per se. Now, radon can be deemed as a cancer-causing agent, and so the severity of it rings a lot of bells with a lot of buyers, right? And so that being said, a seller, if there's standard terms in the standard state contract, is not obligated to make any repairs or improvements based on an inspection. Now, that being said, there's a lot of things they're probably going to have to do for the next buyer if that buyer chooses to cancel, but they're not contractually obligated, or there's no state law or city ordinances that says they have to make any repairs. I'm generalizing, right? So what the buyer is saying, and it all depends on what price was negotiated too. There's a lot more details that go into the contract. The seller may say, we gave it to you at a great price. We're not doing anything more. Feel free to cancel if you don't feel comfortable. So there's no contractual obligation. And it sounds like the seller just said, no, we're not doing it. Now, as a buyer, you have a choice. Do I want to proceed with the home or cancel? It may be unfortunate, but there may be some other terms that play into that as well.
Is there a point in time where it is more important for the sellers to make that decision on we're buying or not? In other words, once all of this is disclosed, you read through all of your contract. You don't have to sign that, right?
So a buyer, typically you negotiate an inspection period that has a sunset date on it. 5 to 7 days is the norm. It can be shorter, it can be longer. You can always extend it if you need more time to troubleshoot. Electrical's a good common one where we need to bring in an electrician to look at stuff. So you can extend that date. But yes, there is a cutoff date that says the way the contract reads is the buyer is allowed to cancel by a certain date. And if so they can't negotiate or agree on repairs, then the buyer's recourse is to walk away if they choose to do so.
All right. Let's say, obviously, this is from one of your clients, so you know about this scenario. You would be advising that client all the way in, right? Get the inspection, first of all. And if something comes back, maybe we can negotiate, maybe not.
Yeah, so inspections can be very emotional, both from buyers and sellers. What we try to do at Voigt Johnson is at the end of the day, it generally comes down to a dollar amount.
Yep.
What's the cost to remediate? What's the cost to fix it? And then at the end of the day, is it worth it to you to incur that expense?
Excuse me. That is at 5:14. What I would suggest is buy the house, and this is Bob Hughes talking here, not Brandon Johnson. Buy the house. Radon mitigation is what I would call affordable. If you need to get into the housing market, and I believe you need to get into again, Bob Hughes saying this, if you want to get into the housing market, buy the house, do the mitigation, you're in, right? You're in the market, you're back, you own your home.
So the typical cost, again, it can be more, it can be less, but around $1,800 is pretty typical for a radon mitigation system. So again, bringing it back, quantifying it to a dollar amount and saying, is this something you feel comfortable? It wasn't initially budgeted in, but are you willing to walk away from the house for this additional cost? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but try to remove the emotions out of the equation when you're dealing with inspection.
And we're specifically talking about radon here, a colorless, odorless gas in the wintertime. It gets, if you've got a crack in your basement floor, sump pump hole, whatever, that's where the gas is going to come up. In the summertime, you're outdoors. The ground is not frozen. The radon gas is everywhere.
Yeah, and it means different things to different people.
For sure.
Some people, when I moved last time, I'm in a neighborhood where we've sold houses and virtually everyone was elevated.
Right.
We did not have a radon mitigation system the time that we lived there.
Right.
When we went to sell, I didn't even get it tested. I just put it in.
Right.
So it affects people differently, and you got to understand and deal with it appropriately.
I think it also underscores the importance of dealing with a realtor at VoigtJohnson.com. And how do we do that?
320-774-2400 or online at VoigtJohnson.com.
Brandon, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.